Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Coffee with Craig. I am Craig DeLuz, your host. We are talking all things Second Amendment, advocacy, politics, media, education, you name it. We're talking about it here at Coffee with Craig. So please make it a point to like and share this video feed with your friends and your family so that they can join us in the conversation. Also, please remember, subscribe to YouTube and subscribe and like our Facebook page so that and follow our Facebook page so that you guys can get the updates as they come across. So let's get into today's topic. You know, ever since in the California legislature, ever since after the last election, the California Democrats got a 2/3 majority in both houses of the California legislature, as well as having a Democratic governor. I just wondered at that point. I wondered at that point when a firearm and ammo tax was going to come forward here in the state of California. In order to pass a tax on taxes at all, in order to increase taxes, you still have to have a 2/3 vote in each house of the legislature. And so we saw them already raise the gas tax here in the state of California. And I knew that it was only a matter of time before they came after a tax on firearms and ammunition. And lo and behold, our good friend, Mr. Jim Cooper of Elk Grove, California, has introduced a measure that would increase taxes on firearms, or not increase, would tax firearms and ammunition being sold in the state of California. Check it out.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members. A study conducted by the U.S. Secret Service and the U.S. Department of Education showed that in 81% of school shootings, at least one other person besides the shooter had information about the attack. AB 2497, the School Gun Violence Prevention Act, will put in place the proper personnel with the proper procedure so that critical information will not be ignored but acted upon. AB 2497 will impose an excise and sales tax on all firearm and ammunition sales. The revenue from this tax will be made available to all middle schools to hire a school counselor and all high schools to hire a school resource officer, which currently do not have the program. AB 2497 will also allow the Department of Justice to flag individuals who are identified in the planning of a school shooting so they are not permitted to purchase any firearms, and will also place penalties on those individuals who make their own non-reported firearms with the intent to resell.
So, all right, so let's be real clear. First and foremost, it's going to be an excise tax, and it's not going to be a small excise tax on firearms and ammunition. Now, this is already on top of the fact that the federal government, Democrats at the federal level, are proposing an increase in the tax, a significant increase in the tax on firearms and ammunition in order to pay for gun violence research. In this particular case, they want to use it to pay for counselors in middle school and school resource officers at the high school level. So basically, campus cops at the high school level, as well as counselors at the middle school level. Now, the counselors are supposed to be tasked with basically looking for students who might have signs of potentially being an active shooter. Literally, that's what it is. It's a surveillance thing that is the goal behind what it is that they want to do. In other words, they literally want to utilize, once again, school counselors to spy on students in order to figure out which ones are potential school shooters. And then on top of it, they're going to report individuals who may potentially threaten a shooting at school. Meaning, and once again, there's not a whole lot of clarification in the language of the bill as to what this quote unquote threatening, the threat is. But whatever it is, if it happens at school, it could potentially keep you from being able to purchase a firearm when you become an adult. I mean, this is such an egregious, such a crazy thing that, you know, even the ACLU came out against this particular measure. Check out what the ACLU had to say.
In general, we think that more counselors in schools is a better approach to creating safer schools. But the language describing the role of the counselor in this bill is somewhat disturbing. Rather than being traditional school counselors who provide help on a range of issues that arise, academic and otherwise, for students, these counselors are defined as having their primary role is detecting and reporting the early warning signs of threats of violence to the school or its pupils. To us, that sounds a lot more like surveillance than it does traditional counseling, and we ask for your no vote.
So with that, what was recommended by the committee was to change the language so that it would just go to counselors in general, which then one has to raise the question, well, then what is the nexus? I mean, if you're going to have school security, right? If you're going to pay for school security, is the school what is the nexus between being a legal firearm owner and campus security? And that's what I brought up in my testimony against this particular measure. Check out what I had to say during my 2 minutes of testimony. On many levels, this bill is troubling. First, relating to just the issues of the increased potential criminal liabilities to mandated reporters. The definitions of what is a threat are so highly subjective in this particular measure, and it would open up those mandated reporters to potential jail time as well as fines. But once again, those are more relating to the public safety issues. In regards to a taxation issue, and something was brought up with another bill, everyone wants and loves some of these programs. We believe, I'm a school board member, I believe in school counselors. I believe in making sure that we have all of the resources available to make sure that our schools are safe. The question comes down is, who is going to pay for it? In this particular case, we are targeting one group of law-abiding citizens who seek nothing more than to exercise their constitutional rights. If we were to tax voters in order to fight voter fraud, if we were to tax those who were desiring to get married additionally in order to pay for domestic violence, these are things that people would basically say would find to be abhorrent. The other issue is that this is a regressive tax. It is already expensive to be a gun owner in the state of California. Now we're going to drastically increase the cost of an individual to be able to own, use, or become proficient in the use of a firearm, in particular in the case where someone is seeking to use it to defend themselves. You are going to make it cost prohibitive so that individuals who are likely in low-income, high-crime areas are not going to be able to exercise their constitutional rights. If there's one thing that we know from jurisprudence in the area of the Second Amendment and all civil rights, is that you do not have the ability to unduly burden individuals who seek to exercise their constitutional rights without some direct nexus. Now, unless these school counselors, once again, are going to be directly only dealing with incidences relating to potential firearm use on campus, or these officers that are going to be put on campus are only going to deal with situations where there is an active shooter or there is a firearm on campus, I'm finding it very difficult to see where there is a direct nexus here. This bill is fraught with constitutional problems, and we believe for that reason we're asking you to vote no. So, and I think I made all of the points there really clear. I mean, just think about it. All right, so if these counselors are not just dealing with those things, then there is no real nexus. If you believe that these are things that need to be taking place, then why just tax gun owners to pay for it? Shouldn't everyone have to bear the burden? What happens if someone brings a knife to school? So you're telling me gun owners have to pay if someone brings a knife to school. If someone brings a bomb to school, so then all of a sudden now we're going to have to pay for that. If you have counselors who are counseling on things that have absolutely nothing to do with firearms or firearms violence, you're telling me that, no, let me take a step back. Even if they are only going to be dealing with firearms related issues. Why are we burdening law-abiding citizens, only law-abiding gun owners, with having to pay for this? I mean, and then on top of it all, they're making it cost prohibitive. And folks, you guys already know. Look, it's like, I mean, I'll just 9mm. If you can get 9mm at 20 cents a round, right? That's considered, at least in California, that's cheap. That's a good deal. So if you're trying to go out and someone wants to own a firearm in order to be able to protect themselves, and they want to be able to train in order to be proficient with their firearm, it could cost them literally hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a year in order to own and train with their firearm. And that's before the tax. Now you're going to put an additional tax on it to make it even harder for individuals who live in low-income communities to be able to defend themselves. You're going to make it so that only the wealthy, the well-to-do, or law enforcement and government, because, by the way, guess who's exempted? You guessed it, law enforcement. Law enforcement, if they're going to buy ammunition, which, by the way, is interesting that law enforcement officers who say that they're purchasing it for work, but law enforcement officers have their ammunition is issued to them. The state, the city or the state, their municipality they work for pays for that ammunition. If they are going to purchase ammunition, why are they exempt from the tax? That doesn't make any sense to me. Once again, the bill says specifically if it's for work, but are they required to ask? I mean, I don't understand exactly how that works. But with that, and this is all part of a cavalier attitude that folks, that anti-gun community has when it comes to the Second Amendment and it comes to the rights of gun owners and comes to those who advocate on behalf of the Second Amendment. These are I really wanted to give you a chance to kind of hear kind of the closing arguments and kind of a little bit of a quip by the chair on this particular on this particular bill, and I'll give you my response to some of their quips at the end.
It's not too often you get the ACLU and the gun rights folks on the same side, but we're not trying to break the bank here. And I'll tell you what, we do tax law-abiding citizens to hire law enforcement officers to keep us safe. That goes on right now. These school shootings have been going on for decades now. We've tried a lot of things. I don't believe gun prohibitions is the answer to this. So we're trying to do something different to actually save our kids. I've heard all the speakers here. None of them have worked in law enforcement. I spent 30 years in law enforcement. I was a captain. I commanded school resource officers. I taught in the schools prevention programs like this. We took guns off kids that were bringing guns on campus to do violence. So I think my expertise in dealing with these problems far outweighs our panel of speakers who have expressed their opinions, which are just that.
I'd like to thank you, Assemblymember Cooper. This gives those who buy firearms and ammunition an opportunity to be part of the solution, not just part of the issue, and I would think that they would embrace that opportunity. With that, the chair's recommendation is do pass as amended to public safety.
Okay, so let's just hit a couple of those things. So first off, Mr. Cooper, you say you spent 30 years in law enforcement. If the voters of your community of Sacramento County actually respected and acknowledged your time and believed that you were effective as a law enforcement officer, then when you ran for sheriff, maybe they would have elected you instead of a guy who, when he entered the race, didn't even live in Sacramento County. Yeah, a guy who, when he decided to run, had to move to Sacramento County to run. That's who you got beat by. That's how little the voters of Sacramento County respected your expertise as a law enforcement officer, because they knew you knew bupkis. Now, I've been in education for over 20 years. I've been dealing with policy for 20 years. So my experience in understanding the difference between a fee and a tax clearly outweighed yours, because when you first started talking about this bill, you were talking about it as a fee and not a tax, because you didn't realize that legally there had to be a nexus in order to make it a fee. But hey, that's your opinion based on your own ignorance. Now, let's also talk about the fact that, well, yeah, we do tax law-abiding citizens in order to pay for law enforcement. But we don't pick out a specific segment of law-abiding citizens and say, we're now going to make you pay for this thing, this stuff over here that has nothing to do with you. We don't segregate out people. Oh, let me clarify. Most of us don't, but you do. Because, well, let's just be honest. You don't like gun owners. And how do I know you like gun owners? You don't like gun owners because while you say you don't believe that banning guns is the answer, you have repeatedly voted to ban guns, to restrict the rights of law-abiding citizens to own and possess firearms. Mr. Cooper, you are a hypocrite and a liar. You're such a liar, you can't even remember what you say. That's how sad that is. And then you have Miss Autumn Burke, who says, well, I would think that they would want to be part of the process. Yeah, the government has done such an effective job in reducing violence on campuses, in reducing violence in our community. They've done such a great job by releasing criminals out on the streets and causing crime and violent crime, excuse me, for the first time in decades to go up. Under your watch, Ms. Burke, you've done such a fantastic job that I want to give you more of my money. Bitch, please. I'm sorry. No, you don't deserve a nickel more of my money. Because I know for a fact that all you are going to do is waste it. When I say you people, I mean Democrats in the California legislature. I mean anti-gun Democrats in the California state legislature. I mean tax and spend anti-gun Democrats in the California state legislature. You don't care about gun rights. I mean, you don't even clarify. You don't care about civil rights. You don't care about making people safer. If you cared about making people safer, you wouldn't be passing legislation that reduces mandatory minimums, that lets criminals out on the streets, lets violent criminals out on the streets. If you really cared, you wouldn't be supporting that legislation. You'd be allowing people in communities, in low-income communities, the communities where you're releasing these criminals, you'd make it easier for them to be able to protect their families and to be able to defend themselves. Instead, you jack up taxes on them. You pass a regressive tax that's going to make it harder for them to be able to defend themselves. So no, I don't believe that what you're proposing here is a solution. I believe that what you are proposing here is part of the problem. And the only real solution, quite frankly, at this point, is making sure that you never hold another office again. But hey, that's just my perspective. These people. Anyway, folks, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for liking and sharing these videos and telling your friends about the Firearms Policy Coalition. You guys make sure to, once again, continue, spread the word. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have fun. Stay safe. Stay free.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.